Everybody knows Professor Josiah S. Carberry, except those who don't. He may be regarded as a specimen of that type of genus homo that lies on the borderline between genius and madness, and must in all candor be recognized as at least unusual, if not downright eccentric. But as 16 Minutes has uncovered in the course of this investigation, some are inclined to use stronger terms to dub both Josiah S. Carberry and those who take an active interest in him as well a bit unusual themselves. Carberry may be characterized briefly as a man of many parts, a man for all seasons. Philosopher, scientist, poet, inventor, world traveler, eternal student, as well as professorial scholar. However, there are limitations, as is suggested by an article in the Providence Journal, which speaks of him as Brown University's most famous but least seen faculty member. He came into existence at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, 72 years ago. The exact day and hour are uncertain, but evidence points to January 24th, 1929, and an unlocked bulletin board on the first floor of University Hall. On that day, this notice appeared. Next Thursday evening at 8:15 in Sales Hall, Dr. J.S. Carberry will deliver a lecture on archaic Greek architectural revetments in connection with Ionian phonology. There are variant accounts of what happened to the notice. One suggests that it was removed. Another, that Professor Benjamin Crocker Clow, the David Benedict Professor of Greek and Latin Classics, walked by, noticed the announcement, and realized it was more phony than phonological. He very carefully inserted the word not before deliver, thus changing the text to J.S. Carberry will not deliver a lecture. Professor Carberry has not given a lecture since, and as some have suggested, we are probably better people for it. Some of the lectures he has not given have such intriguing titles as Asp and Aardvarks, Aboriginal Pottery, Its Cause and Cure, The Influence of Psychoceramics on the Neo-Protestant Movement at Berkeley, and Positive Negativism. We asked Brown University's Chancellor Emeritus, Artemis Jakowski, to provide us with some insight into Professor Carberry's rather mysterious position at Brown.
Well, one of the most interesting things about Professor Carberry was a telephone call I once received from the office of Vartan Gregorian. The question was, we have checked almost every faculty member on the president's list, but we cannot find where Professor Carberry is. Would you tell us something about him, because we don't know whether he's really here or not?
So, the president of the university and the administration that supposedly employs this professor are themselves in the dark about this man's relationship with the university.
And the question was, is he being paid? I mean, is there some administrative follow-up on the fact that he was a member of the faculty?
Chancellor Jakowski was hesitant to elaborate further on his involvement with Carberry. What we did learn, however, was that Carberry's parentage is unknown, and there is no evidence of his childhood or youth. On the contrary, there is evidence that he had no childhood or youth. He is listed variously as Professor of Psychoceramics, Professor of Psychoceramics on sabbatical leave, Visiting Professor of Psychoceramics, and more recently, Professor Emeritus of Psychoceramics. His research is to some perhaps obscure, if not opaque. But to Professor Terry Tullis of Brown University's Geology Department, Carberry's field of psychoceramics and cracked pots is anything but obscure.
As we try to understand the fracture of pots, one of the things that we often resort to is the old kind of tried and true field methods that Carberry himself has pioneered. And so, you know, I've often heard, I haven't actually seen this, but I've heard that in the field he will, you know, kind of tap around a little bit, trying to... See, now there we've got a fracture If we look at it carefully, you can see it's large at this end and it kind of tapers to a small little tip at this end.
Now, as I understand it, psychoceramics isn't just about studying cracks. Don't you have some larger psychic or even cosmic vision of this field in your research?
My vision compared to Carberry's is small. So I'm not quite sure where he's heading. I'm just kind of the tail being wagged by the Carberry dog here and following wherever he leads me.
Is there anything you're hiding from us?
Not that I'm aware of. Meeting the professor face-to-face and really getting a feeling for what he's really trying to do, I think will make a big difference. So we have a meeting scheduled soon, and I'm looking forward to that.
A meeting which we learned later Professor Carberry was unable to attend. Carberry, we are told, should be regarded as an anthropologist in the widest sense and is competent in astronomy and astronautics. On one occasion, writing NASA on the merits of condensing the word astronautical vehicle into one useful word, astrical, thus saving space. Even earlier in his career, Carberry is said to have shown himself to be a perceptive and productive student of the ancient classics, publishing 2 brief but learned notes in the classical weekly entitled Another Catullus to Another Lesbia, and Queen Elizabeth Quotes Horace. He even managed to publish the Carberry Cookbook, whose recipes, as consort Connie Worthington explained to us, offer both delights and dangers. What exactly was Professor Carberry's contribution to the Carberry Cookbook?
Oh, well, you know, Carberry, sometimes he comes and sometimes he goes, but most of the time he's expected or he's just left. He did contribute a number of editorial comments to the cookbook.
Now, glancing through this cookbook, I'm struck by the arguably whimsical nature of some of these recipes and by their, well, rather esoteric ingredients. I mean, 1 whole camel, medium size, and the rather difficult preparation of some of these dishes.
Oh, heavens no. If you have a recipe like boiled water, you can do anything. And not only that, I must say, there are not very many cookbooks that have camel. We have 3 recipes for camel.
Is Carberry's influence limited to a small group or circle at Brown University?
No. He's a world traveler and well known.
So famous a world traveler, in fact, that the New York Times in September of 1974 featured a full-page account of his exploits, describing him as the Paul Bunyan of travel. Soon after Carberry's discovery, it was also revealed that Carberry had a wife, Laura. A long-suffering, somewhat dowdy housefrau, Laura was, it seems, everlastingly unaware of her husband's whereabouts. Laura Carberry's notoriety, however, stemmed not from her husband's widely publicized exploits, but rather from her own peculiar trouble with English grammar. Laura, it seems, never mastered the use of the personal pronoun, as is evident in her many correspondences in which she writes, "Warmest greetings from my husband and I," or "I have never known a man whose attachment to his wife is as strong as yours to mine." This, of course, brings up Lois and Patricia, Carberry's daughters, young ladies of uncertain age, insouciant, a little odd, and said by some to be a little wild. Perhaps making up for what their mother lacks in syntactical skill, both girls display a literary flair. Lois has had her work widely published in the Providence Journal, Atlantic Monthly, and the New Yorker. Patricia, also a poet, is known mostly for her skill as a hunter of animals spelled with the letter PT. Then there is Grayson, Truman Grayson, known variously as assistant or hindrance to J.S. Carberry. Grayson seems to be a rather colorless person, known principally as the victim of a very peculiar weakness, his vulnerability to bites by animals whose names begin with the letter A. Asps, adders, aardvarks, arachnids, aurochs, the list goes on. Carberry and family travel widely, their postcards and letters arriving regularly on College Hill. Who else, wrote the New York Times in 1974, in the annals of globe-trotting has been traveling continuously for 45 years and shows no sign of stopping? Who else combines such swiftness of foot with such a wide range of erudite accomplishments? One of Dr. Carberry's most spectacular accomplishments to date is his flight around the world in just 24 hours, authenticated by dated postcards written and mailed by him at various points where he touched down and stopped for lunch. Carberry Society members Jeff Schreck and Nancy Cassidy, themselves world travelers, described to us the details of this whirlwind tour.
What we've never been able to figure out is how he was able to get completely around the world in 24 hours.
We ourselves found it very slow getting place to place when we traveled around the world.
We once tried to duplicate this trip, and we couldn't even get out of one airport in 24 hours. So
this was quite a feat. I mean, even by today's standards.
I think they were ahead of their time. I think that they are just very busy people. And they're so busy that they're probably in more than one place at one time.
He seems ubiquitous and elusive at the same time.
Well, he's certainly enigmatic in every context in which he's been observed. Everyone always wants to see more of him than they've seen already.
And the people who have not heard him speak at the lectures that have been scheduled seem eager to have more times when they don't see him at others.
Absolutely. I think that the privilege of being someplace where he might be, even if he doesn't come, is really enriching. And in fact, we're not really sure that he's not here right now.
Carberry, despite his long absences, never forgot his allegiance to Brown University. On Friday the 13th of May, 1955, there arrived in University Hall a letter from a New Hampshire state liquor store, signed by Carberry, containing the sum of $101.01. The letter stated that the enclosed $101.01 is for a special fund in memory of my future late wife, Laura Carberry, to be known, of course, as the Josiah S. Carberry Fund. Sophie Blisstein is Secretary-Treasurer of the Carberry Fund.
As of today, the principal balance from that $101.01 is $18,074.82. And the income from it, which they spend every year for books which Professor Carberry would or would not approve of, is $2,200. No, it's almost a palindrome. $2,202.
Very impressive. Now, I've noticed here that books purchased with this fund have a very special seal inside the front cover. Tell us about that, if you could.
Well, the book plate looks as though it's a brown seal, but instead of the university seal in the center of it is a facsimile of the month of February, with the 13th and the 29th in red. And then the Latin inscription underneath is Dulcat Decoris Deciperin Loco, which means how sweet and proper it is to mess around with trifles or to be silly once in a while.
That's very profound. Now, I'm assuming that you've not met Professor Carberry, nor has he appeared at any engagements or book fund events. Are you disappointed?
Yes, well, we were very disappointed when we had the we had a big party for the cookbook, and we sent out invitations and expected that Professor Carberry would come, but he never did.
There were, in addition, certain specific stipulations in the original letter, most notably that each Friday the 13th shall henceforth be designated as Carberry Day. The curator shall urge alumni, students, friends of the university, and other unfortunates to donate anonymously to the fund such small change as they might have on their persons on Carberry Day. Thus was Carberry Day established. much to the chagrin, perhaps, of a few more sober members of the Brown establishment who are given to mumbling, "This is not the sort of thing that will do the university any good." Similar reservations were expressed by two Brown University undergraduates who, while wishing to remain anonymous, felt compelled to voice their opinions about Carberry's presence or lack thereof.
I'd have to say he's the only Brown professor that you can never get a hold of. And that's really frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, here it is. All of us are coming to this institution. I mean, this happened to, like, my friends. Everybody that I know has, tried to take one of his classes. I mean, he's probably one of the most famous Brown professors. There's this whole list. Josiah Carberry sits there. And it's really frustrating. I mean, our parents pay Brown some ridiculous sum of money for us to come here every year. We try to enroll in classes. The professor never shows up. And it's incredibly frustrating.
Well, for someone who is so frustrating, he remains quite popular.
I think he adds a lot to Brown. Brown culture. Everyone talks about him. He's kind of like the professor everyone knows about and everything like that. So, yeah, he does that. I think he does that to Brown. I just wish that I could take a class with him.
As for a verified existence or current whereabouts, no one seems to know or is unwilling to say. Mail addressed to Carberry or from him continues to arrive at Brown University. University archivist Martha Mitchell has been assigned the dubious honor of cataloging these materials.
Actually, there are quite a few things here, but Carberry rents out some of the space to other professors.
And this is a collection of items dating back to...
Well, about 1930. We don't have the original Carberry document, which is the sign they put up announcing his lecture, but we have correspondence as early as 1930. Here's one, uncertain date. Dear Mr. Clow, I thought you might be interested to learn that I had chanced to meet Professor Josiah Carberry, formerly of your Department of Ceramics, on a very remote little inhabited island in the Pacific. He is gathering material on the now extinct snipers hunters. Assisting him is his old colleague Grayson, who was nearly bitten by an unusual cousin of the antelope. I say nearly, just as the creature was about to bite the unwary Grayson, it was killed by the younger Miss Carberry, who mistook the insect for a puffin. As Mrs. Carberry said afterwards, there was a frightening incident. I had dinner with the professor and found him to be a chap of rare wit. The menu consisted of puffins a la turtle, a soup de puffin, and afterwards we had coffee and puffins.
Mrs. Carberry's comment, dare I say, seems a little strange, doesn't it?
Mrs. Carberry is an ungrammatical person.
Because she says in the letter...
There was a frightening incident.
What other kinds of correspondence are collected here?
Well, he sent a number of postcards from the various places that he traveled to, including space.
How did this come about?
Well, Byron Lichtenberg, who was a Brown alumnus, was invited on a space trip with the astronauts as a civilian, and Carberry went with him. And Carberry had to send this letter back. It was addressed to President Howard Swearer, explaining why he wasn't able to meet his classes.
Because he was in space.
He was in space.
I understand there's also one rather famous item in the archive, an award, I believe, Carberry received.
Well, yes. In 1991, he was awarded an Ig Nobel Award. This award was made to him as a bold explorer and eclectic seeker of knowledge for his pioneering work in the field of psychoceramics, the study of crackpots. This is the award.
And it's screaming because?
I don't know. Whatever it is, it's upside down.
And what does the inscription on the award say?
May the light of truth and knowledge shine.
His name is on a number of mailing lists, charitable enterprises, academic programs, and drive-in theaters. Indeed, there is even a poem written about him, which Carberry archivist Chet Worthington was kind enough to share with us.
What Boswell did for Scrofulous Sam, what Swift has done for premium ham, what a capital does for a proper noun, Professor Carberry does for Brown. What Korsakov did for the humble bee, what the minuet does for the key of G. Like a putty nose on a circus clown, so the professor adds to Brown. What Hawthorne did for a gabled house, what Disney has done for Mickey Mouse, what a bust can do for a strapless gown, Professor Carberry has done for Brown.
As learned scholars know, it was said centuries ago that a poet is born, not made. Of Josiah Carberry, the opposite must be said. Carberry was unavailable for comment, and as per our repeated request for an interview, we did not know where to send them. I'm read badly.